Good evening and welcome to the first session of 2015. I'm not sure whether it's still acceptable to say Happy New Year. I think I can get away with it till maybe Saturday. So Happy New Year to all of you. Let us know where you're watching from using hashtag TF Sessions. Also, any questions that you have for our guest speakers tonight. We've got people managing the Twitter feeds and we'll be able to ask them on your behalf. Tonight we are absolutely delighted to have Henning and Fred who are joining us to show their work. Also tonight's compares are the lovely Courtney Price and also, my brain's just gone, Simon Lundberg. And we promised that we weren't going to do surnames at this because I messed it up in rehearsal. Simon is the Modo product designer, and you're new-ish to the team.
2 weeks.
You're 2 weeks to the team and we've made you do this. Maybe you need to talk to your boss about that one. Okay, as per usual, let us know where you're at, where you're watching, etc. And I'm going to shut up because there's a lot to cover tonight and it's very, very cool, interesting stuff. So first up is Henning.
Hello.
Over to you, boys.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. Henning, yeah, thanks for coming and taking the time out to show us some of your work. But,
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so before you get started, give us a bit of a background about yourself and also the kind of work that you do and how you've managed to get from starting point to where you're at now. But that's basically.
I was also always interested in creation, making stuff, building Legos. Then I went into drawing at about age 15, I think.
Okay.
So then I got into art, and I discovered that the internet was a thing, and the internet had a lot of art, which is pretty nice. And once I got into more drawing, I learned that 3D was a thing.
Yes.
So I got started with ZBrush.
Okay.
I was about 15 at the time.
Right.
And I was digging into this whole overwhelming world.
Okay.
That was awesome.
Right. Brilliant.
It was so interactive.
Yeah.
I was sculpting with a mouse.
Yes.
And I was doing absolute crap, and I loved every moment of it. So that was fun. After a little while, I discovered that Modo was a thing. Yes. And that was like my first real introduction to 3D. Okay. Proper 3D, not just sculpting.
Okay.
I tried Maya, 3ds Max as well, but they were really clunky. I was like 16, 17 at that time.
So young.
Yeah,
thank you. Really young to get into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it happened.
Good.
And yeah, Modo was a big part of that.
Okay.
It really helped me to be able to make art, actually, as opposed to not making art.
So you flirted with a few of the other packages and you settled with Modo, yeah?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Then I kind of accidentally got an internship.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
As you do.
As you do. That was in my local city in Bergen, where there isn't a lot of VFX or any kind of commercial stuff. So there was one company there, which took me in.
That's pretty cool.
So that was really nice.
Yeah.
I was 17 at the time.
17. How old are you now?
23.
23. And also, you've recently just graduated as well, haven't you?
Yeah, that was about a week ago.
Well, there you go.
Oh, congratulations.
Brilliant. And here you are.
Welcome to the industry.
Yeah, thanks.
Good.
Yeah, so I graduated from the animation workshop last Friday.
Yeah.
So
good.
That was good stuff.
Nice.
So yeah, after my accidental internship, I went to school.
Yep.
And yeah, just graduated.
Nice.
And now I'm here, and I've been here for the last 7 months, I think.
Cool.
In London, in Surrey.
And you're currently working at NPC, yeah?
Yeah, currently working at NPC.
Brilliant.
Just over, right there.
All right, nice.
Across the street.
Across the street.
Yeah. Well, let's get started with this first project and see. Let's talk us through the inception of this idea. Actually, it's quite an interesting one.
Yeah. So I've always been fascinated by ocean thingies and monsters, and let's combine it too and make an ocean monster thingy. This is it was a fun one. Okay. It's inspired by anglerfish in general and just deep sea creatures.
Okay.
And I wanted to make something massive. As I said, the school is called the Animation Workshop. There was a lot of animation. There was a lot of stuff like that. And this was kind of a reaction to that. I needed to do some monsters.
Okay.
So that was fun.
And this one's called?
This is called Big Ass Scary Fish.
It looks like a big ass scary fish.
Yeah, that was happy. Yeah. So this is the same workflow as I do with most of my things. So sculpt in ZBrush.
Right.
and render everything in Modo, and post-work in Photoshop on top afterwards.
Okay. And I mean, the actual the design itself, are you just free? Are you sketching out the rough idea of what you want, or are you just completely just going straight into the 3D program?
This is 3D sketching. Sometimes I do sketches of paper, photo bashing, or whatever. But this is all to sketch in 3D. There's no 2D sketch here.
So you just create a shape and kind of like mold it as you see fit.
It's very quick to do that in ZBrush, cool. And then you get the volume in it right away. You don't have the problem with like doing like an orthographic drawing where nothing actually fits in terms of volume.
And how long would you say that took you to achieve that?
Oh, I can't remember. Month and a half, I think.
All right. Okay. So there's a fair amount of work involved. Yeah.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah. Cool.
But so you did that during your spare time at uni?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, right.
And this was kind of reaction to my monsters again.
Okay.
I've done a lot of monsters at that time.
Right.
And I was getting a little sick of it.
Okay.
So I wanted to do more naturalistic stuff.
Yeah.
More humans. And like I was drawn towards like more classical sculptures.
Right. Yeah.
So that was my goal. I wanted to do something which felt like an old classical sculpture.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful. Really hard to do.
Yeah.
So this was a challenge. Also, just learning to sculpt hair and a lot of beard.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful.
Thank you.
I mean, the lighting scenario with this, I mean, you've got quite a nice rim light on there, and I mean, talk us through the lighting setup for this.
The lighting here it's a fairly standard 3-point light setup. With it, the key light coming from screen left, just mainly illuminating most things. It's slightly blue, slightly cold color.
Yes, yeah.
Then I have a rim light to separate him from the background, which is warm and nice. Yeah. And there's a little fill light from screen right below, which is like purple. Just to make it like slightly more vibrant.
Yes.
And get a bit of a transition between the...
Yeah. And as a shameless plug, on our tutorial site, which I'm running with my friend Morten, flipnormals.com, we have a tutorial on lighting this exact thing, which was convenient.
That's a nice segue. Yeah. I mean, is there any like just general tips and tricks that you would say that you know, as a quick overview for the tutorial that you would say helped lighten a shot like this? Yeah,
learning a bit about photography helps a lot.
Yep.
For instance, there's like depth of field here, which is something you don't necessarily think about if you just come from a CG background, because naturally there is no depth of field in CG. It's like a byproduct of the lenses almost. So using like photographic elements like that, and also having some color in your light. A lot of people use like just white in light, and then you're only focusing on values, but adding some subtle hues. The light from like screen left is almost white. Yeah. But it's just enough to add some vibrance to it.
Sure.
So every single light I use, like, unless it's for a very specific purpose, has some hue to it.
Right. Brilliant. Cool.
And this is Moody Conrad.
Conrad.
Yeah. This was also my little monster face. This is a fun one. Yeah. I wanted to do just something angry.
Yeah.
There's no whole lot of backstory to this. To be perfectly honest, it's just it was just a fun little piece. This one was relatively quick compared to the other one because it's just a bust.
Okay. Right.
And a lot of it is also hidden in shadows.
Right.
This was one of my first projects in Mari. So that was a fun one.
So how did you find that?
It's good.
Yeah, I mean Mari specifically. I mean, like, is that your first? That was your first dip into Mari, yeah?
Yeah, I believe so.
What were the challenges? I mean, what version of Mari was it?
This was 1.4, I believe, with no layer system.
Right.
Yeah, so that was a pain in the ass.
So this is no prior industry knowledge. You're just going in fresh as a student, trying to understand.
I mean, I've been texture painting for a while using Mudbox, but my computer and my budget couldn't allow for Mari.
Mari, yeah,
sure. So yeah, this was my first dig into Mari. Not my first dig into texture painting.
Right.
But yeah, definitely Mari. That's overwhelming. Yeah. It's a big, scary application, but it's also the most powerful one for texturing.
Okay.
There is just nothing like it for that.
Yeah, sure.
So before you used Mari, you used Mudbox.
Yeah. Which is hard going back to now.
Okay. Cool.
So you're using UDIMs and...
Yeah.
And I mean, is there multiple UDIMs on this, or is it just...
Single UDIM.
Single UDIM, and was there a size of the texture, the tile?
I believe this is just a 4K map.
Okay, 4K, cool. And the typical like channels, or channels that you'd be using?
Diffuse, specular, bump.
Okay.
And either raw geometry or displacement map.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Okay.
Because I switch around all the time.
Right. Cool. And then you apply all those textures in Modo and final render, and the rest of this, the aesthetic look is all Photoshop, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Which also, shameless plug, we have a tutorial on doing that as well. It's called post-work, or using post-work to enhance your 3D renders or something like that.
Yeah,
Right.
cool.
On flipnormals.com.
There you go. Wink.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. So yeah, post-work is a huge part of my process because it just increases your. It just means you have more tools to do it. If you do everything in 3D, it's really, really hard to get the exact look you want. And I might have been able to get this look in 3D, but it would have taken a lot of time.
Yeah.
But in post-work, you can just change everything so quickly using color correction, just liquify, just going crazy.
Yeah.
You just add a splash of paint here and there
Exactly.
if you need it.
Like in foreground here, you can see that the clavicles are just kind of painted out. In the background, there are some like fire things.
Yeah.
Which
It separates him.
yeah, it just
Really.
separates him and
Yeah.
it makes him look more threatening.
Yeah. So I mean, how much, if you had to percentage it, how much would you do in post and versus 3D?
I take it as far as I can in 3D.
Okay.
But the last maybe like 10% visually is
Right.
done.
So time-wise?
Time-wise, it's maybe like 2% in post-work,
Okay.
but it has a huge impact.
Right. Cool.
Right.
Nice.
And then we have this is based on Norwegian folklore.
Okay.
It's called Huldra, which is perceived as a very beautiful and attractive woman who's in some fairy tales she's described as having like a wooden back.
Okay.
So her back is either like hollow or just rotten wood.
Okay.
So this was a huge challenge here, to making that look integrated and nice.
And she lures people to their doom?
Maybe. I should probably be better versed in my Norwegian mythology, but she's a beautiful woman at least. That was a huge challenge, just making something look appealing.
Yeah.
So I want to make it look like appealing and also like sinister. Kind of like I wanted the feeling of kind of like Pan's Labyrinth.
Okay.
This.
And the posing of the model itself. I mean, are you rigging at any point?
I rigged it in Maya.
Okay.
And I got a friend of mine, Marion, a very talented animator at Framestore, to pose it for me.
Okay.
Because that's hard.
Yeah.
And I can't do posing
Really good.
Right.
to save my life.
And the lighting of it is very subtle, and it's well lit. There's a lot of shadows like complementing the shot.
Yeah.
And it still looks very simple.
Yeah.
But
that was a huge challenge, making it look elegant.
Yeah.
It's very easy to overlight something, overcomplicate it. The light rig here is simple in technical terms. It's hard for me. It was hard for me artistically to do it.
Okay. You spent a lot of time in that, or
I spent about 70 hours on the entire project.
Sorry, say it.
70.
Okay.
70.
Is that broken up over days? And
Yeah,
weeks
that
or-
was
not in one sitting, I hope.
Yeah, 3 days. No
Yeah, that
food.
was 3 days.
Help him out.
This summer I was interning in Framestore, and next
Okay.
to the Framestore work we had to do a personal project as well. And I chose this,
Okay.
so I was logging every hour.
Okay.
Right.
And I had about 8 weeks to do it in total, so I definitely had a deadline.
So this is after your working hours.
Yeah.
So you
you're
spent
going
10
home.
weeks, 10 hours a week on...
Yeah, that was hard work, but it was nice. It's really good to be in that environment where you can just get really good help from very skilled artists, which I hadn't had before.
So that's interesting. I mean, are you getting feedback as well from your peers? And
I'm trying to be very honest about that.
Yes.
Presenting the work as it is, not trying to cover up with excuses, just trying to be honest.
You want the most brutal type of feedback
You want the most,
can get.
the most useful, rather.
Yeah,
If it's brutal, that's just nice. If brutally honesty is nice, but you also have to make sure that you take what's useful from it.
Sure.
If you have a strong creative vision, it's so easy for somebody to dilute your idea. And you end up with just something which is far away from
Designed by committee.
Yeah, exactly. Designed by committee, and you end up with like a blob instead of like an actual strong silhouette.
Yeah. Good. Yes.
But you did this using your standard workflow, model in ZBrush, retopo in Modo.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Exactly. And post-work in Photoshop. And this is it's something to do a lot as well. These are speed sculpts. I'm working in visual effects today, and that's a lot of work.
Yes.
You don't have a whole lot of time for personal projects.
Right.
So these are all done in like I think less than about 3-4 hours.
Okay.
So from the very start, the very first brushstroke in ZBrush to the last like Photoshop tweak.
Really?
Yeah. So
is that constraints that you set yourself, or is that something you've developed over time that you can pretty much gauge 4 hours?
Yeah, I definitely have constraints here.
Okay.
I could take any of these and just finish them off, but I just find it really refreshing just to do this.
Right.
So I get something. I don't get stuck in a project for like 3 months, which
Yeah.
is which can easily happen.
Yeah.
But I also get something which looks pretty okay. It's not refined at all. It still looks sketchy. But
Very good.
But because of the deadline, you're kind of forcing yourself to actually finish stuff instead of
instead of the sketchy look being a limitation, it becomes like an art style almost.
Right.
Okay.
Like it kind of you just get this like brushstroke feeling. It looks rough and nice.
Nice, nice.
So it's using like a limitation as a strength, I think.
Yeah.
So who are these 3 characters? I mean, where the inspiration come from?
The guy on the left is inspired by Dishonored. I'm very fascinated by the Dishonored universe.
Okay.
Very.
So that's a computer game.
That's a computer game.
Right.
Very rugged characters.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a return to the world to London in like 1850s.
Yeah.
Very harsh characters, very brutal, and kind of like brushstroke as well.
Okay.
So that's it's a huge inspiration for a lot of my work. Middle guy is Voldemort.
Yeah.
Because he's alright.
Yeah.
And the guy on the right is just a doodle, just regular doodle stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have Bob. This is the project I'm going to be talking more in depth about now.
Yep. Sure.
And this is also coming from my inspiration or my fascination for the sea. Just we know so little about it, and it's just dark, and anything can just happen there.
Usually sea monsters.
Usually sea monsters. They have a tendency to happen in my pieces. So that's fun.
Okay.
So let's get started with this one. It started off with a sketch. Well, this is like or rather a photo collage.
Okay.
The good thing about using like a photo collage as opposed to actually sketching is that your mental library gets so easily exhausted. Like your shape language is so limited.
Right.
So if you try to sketch it, you just get the same shapes all over and over. At least I feel that. There are people who can just do crazy stuff, but I keep repeating myself. By using something like this, I get like shapes for free if you want.
Okay.
And then you just kind of chuck stuff together and
doing a couple different iterations here and there, and then just trying out things.
Right.
And then also just painting whatever I couldn't find photos of.
Okay.
And then it's into ZBrush. I use ZBrush a lot for concept as well. So I take it like the sketch is very rough from Photoshop.
Right.
It doesn't have. It doesn't work in. It's not a volumetric sketch. You can't translate it one-to-one.
Yeah. It's more of a style guide.
Yeah, exactly. It's more like kind of the feeling I want of the character.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be this nice, pleasant undersea king.
A friendly sea monster.
A friendly sea monster. Yeah. I started out just using C-squares in ZBrush, and just quickly blocking it out. To this point here, I just care about. I don't care too much about the silhouette here. I care more about the base mesh. So I have enough geometry to actually do the things I want. He needs an arm. He needs a tail section.
Right. Yeah.
And take it further.
Okay.
And at every stage, I get feedback from my peers.
Right. Okay.
So you have a network of compatriots that you show this.
Yeah, definitely.
Show this to while you're working on it.
Yeah.
So I mean, if in a working environment, it's usually the client, but now you're using your peers as that client feedback loop, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And a couple of more hours, maybe like 2 days worth of sculpting.
Right.
Where I'm thinking here about the silhouette. The silhouette is king.
Right.
I do also think about anatomy, but yeah, silhouette is the top priority at this point here.
So how much emphasis do you give on anatomy? I mean,
yeah, I think it's important that if you want to make something look credible, it needs a basis in anatomy, like either human or animal or some like insects. I mean, as long as it looks credible, as long as it's sourced from real world, because it's working. It's naturalistic by default. So if you just take that, it's already going to work.
Right.
Trying to invent your anatomy is a bit tricky, because that's just a lot of work, and it's pointless because you already have a system which is working.
Yeah.
So he still has he still has like the bony landmarks, a clavicle. He has pectoralis, biceps, whatever.
So it's kind of a suspension of disbelief aid.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it is.
Nice.
Yeah. But even though it's a magical sea turtle undersea, he still has remnants of human anatomy in it.
So at this stage here, how far in the process would you say you are at this point?
It's hard to say. Modeling is maybe about 50% done, of 30-40% done.
Okay.
Because the main shapes are working here.
Okay.
And this is for me the hardest stage, because this is where you define the anatomy. This is where you define the character.
Yeah.
The rest is just work. The rest is just
adding the details.
It's just adding details, and adding details isn't hard. It just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Anybody can do that, but this is the part I'm struggling with.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So after this stage, then all my shapes are working. So then I take it into Modo and do a retopo job on it.
Okay, and that's the raw mesh that you've exported from ZBrush into Modo, yeah?
Yeah, this is just raw geometry.
Okay, raw
And I just start out by blocking out the main shapes here.
Okay, and the topology, retopology, is that a challenge for you? Is that something that you've developed over the years?
Yeah, it's I've done a lot of retop work,
right?
And so it's not hard for me. It just takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to get the loops to flow just right, but yeah, I feel comfortable doing this.
But it's definitely a discipline that's, you know, you've had to refine and learn and understand the nuances of it all.
And I didn't really pick up retopology until Modo introduced it. I used Topogon before, but the moment Modo introduced it was 6.01, I think. Okay. Yeah, I just switched over right away.
Right.
Because it's such an advantage to having everything in one application, as opposed to going between various ones.
Right, right.
Are you thinking about deformations and stuff like that when you do your topo? Like the polyflow for animation and stuff?
It depends. If I do just a person project, which is just simply going to be a still image, I don't care. I just want it to be looking kind of nice. I'm a modeler by trade. I kind of need good wireframe. But if it's not something I'm completely. I'm not very strict about that.
Right.
I have something called this. This was supposed to be for my show reel. So then it's kind of important. If you're applying for modeling position, topology is kind of up there of important things.
Sure.
Yeah. Topology is your business card.
Yeah, it kind of is. So this is the final topology for the body, which took maybe 2-3 days or something like that.
Okay.
It's fairly simple. It doesn't have a lot of details into it.
But it's cleaner, it's a lot lighter.
Yeah, it's clean, it's nice, it's easy to work with.
Good flow of polys,
Yeah.
Easy to UV map?
Very easy to map.
Okay.
Nice flows, nice edge flows.
Cool.
And the final model with a little crown.
Nice.
Made from the bones of his fallen enemies.
I thought you said he was nice.
He is nice. He just had bad enemies. And then the beloved UV part. Yeah.
So the UV process, I mean, again, is that, what are the challenges with that?
Not going mental.
Right.
Yeah, it's nobody enjoys doing UV mapping.
Right.
But yeah, the technical challenges are making sure that you don't have any stretching, making sure it's all uniform and nice. Also, having a nice UV layout is very important. For personal projects, maybe not as important, but professionally, it's very important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your texture artist will be mad at you.
For wasting UV space?
Mostly for wasting their time. Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, is that UV'd Modo?
The way I did UVs at this time was select the seams in Modo and take it into ZBrush using UV Master there. Okay. Because it's a very powerful unfolding plugin.
Right.
After that, Modo improved the UV tools significantly. So today I would just stick to Modo for this.
Okay.
Again, keeping it all in one application.
Yeah. Good.
UV Master is still awesome, and for really complex things, I would still use it. It's very quick and dirty.
Yeah. Good.
And this is the final sculpt, which took a couple of weeks to do. It's it's fairly detailed.
Yeah, there's a lot of detail in there.
This is just manual work. It's not particularly hard to do, as I said before. It just takes a lot of time.
Right. And again,
the basic shape is still the same as before. You've just added all the
the detail work shouldn't really affect the silhouette. Yeah.
And I mean, this process here, how long would you think would that specifically from the UVs back into ZBrush? How long?
I'm guessing about 2 weeks, maybe.
2 weeks.
Yeah, but this is not full time. This is 2 weeks being a student as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. More close up.
Nice.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time on this part as well. This is the part I spent the most time on, because this was also I knew from early on that this was he was going to be facing the camera this way.
Okay.
So I'm focusing my efforts on these areas.
Right.
And the face and the general front area.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I was about to say neck, but he has one.
Yeah. I'm kind of trying to focus the details where you're looking, because you tend to look where the details are, and then just to help the composition along, just adding details that people will just naturally look in those areas.
So you're thinking about the image composition when you're doing the sculpting as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Cool.
And just another close-up of his face. And speaking of image composition, whenever I'm doing these projects, I do test renders as early on as possible, again, to test the image composition.
Okay.
At this point, it's not working because it's a model with hands, arms straight down. It hardly has any detail on it.
Okay.
It's not finished. But the good thing is it keeps me sane.
To render progressively throughout the process. Yeah. Okay.
Because basically you're looking at a very grey and boring model. I mean, it doesn't have textures. It doesn't have anything. And just to keep my inspiration up, I do this all the time.
Right.
And also it helps the final mood. Like already here I'm experimenting with kind of color grading. And the color grading here is actually kind of similar to the last one.
Yeah.
So I'm also reusing that, or at least using it as a basis.
Okay.
And just playing slightly with the shader and the overall mood of it.
Yeah. And it's a 3-point light setup again.
Yeah.
Same idea as Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And then I'm starting the look dev on it. Just bringing all the textures into Modo and just doing the shading of it.
And what are you texturing in this one?
This is Mario again.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, this I believe was my second Mario project.
Right.
And at this point, Mario had progressed, so we now have layers,
Right.
which made me a very happy texture artist.
Brilliant. Okay. So the jump from 1 to
that
2,
was it was just a very big difference in terms of artistic, what you do artistically.
Right.
Okay.
Because you didn't have to think about all the technical elements anymore.
Okay then.
At least not to the same degree. Mario is still a big program.
Yeah.
But it has to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, multiple. So you got 3 UDIM patches with this, and
4K.
4K, yeah. All right. Then. Cool.
Yeah.
And again, bump spec.
Bump spec, roughness.
Yep.
Maybe displacement. Can't remember.
Okay. Cool.
And diffuse, of course.
And the diffuse. Yeah.
Goes without saying.
Yeah.
So just trying to play with the idea of of the composition, the color grading.
Yeah. Nice.
Getting further ahead, stole some fish from the Modo presets. Shamelessly put it in.
Right.
Didn't credit anybody.
It gives you scale, right?
It gives you scale and it gives you some more vibrance. In general, this image here is the character is brown, and the background is blue purplish.
Yeah.
So just having one more, just having
little dabs of color.
And they're also warm and vibrant.
Cool. And also, I can see you've started to go more into the post process with the Photoshop. There's a lot more elements inside the shot as well.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. And also just having some more story elements, like the crown is getting along there.
Oh, okay.
And just the fish. They're also kind of telling a story. In some subtle way.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And then I'm going more into the final rendering.
Right.
And this guy, he has like a pink little shoe in his hand, and I'm not sure if it's my first pair of shoes, but it's one of my earliest shoes. So I was walking around with like tiny little pink shoes, and I scanned it in, and I used it as a basis.
Nice.
So
Right.
yeah, so this is my baby shoe, and
So it's a 3D scan of a baby shoe.
yep. We topologized, texture, and everything.
Wow.
Lovely.
Unfortunately, it didn't work. I just wanted like a more personal personal touch
Like
to
a signature.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
and making it more personal.
Yeah, I think it's a good. Yeah.
But
That's
it
a
didn't
good
work,
idea.
unfortunately. I thought my idea was that this big king character just found the shoe, which totally didn't work. So I killed it off.
So you're constantly thinking about like the story and why things are in the shot.
I'm trying to. I mean, sometimes like before, it was I just want to make like a big fish,
Right.
which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was definitely had more thought into it.
Okay.
What kind of character it was.
Mm.
Yeah, and this is just directly a screenshot for the Modo preview.
Okay.
Just trying out things, trying out poses, trying out different camera angles.
And again, are you rigging this guy? Is he deforming?
No, normally I rig my characters, but this was so simple in terms of posing. He's basically just moving his arms a little out.
Okay.
Right.
So this is, I believe, it's just post in. It might actually been post in Modo or with ZBrush.
Okay.
Using the flex tool in Modo if I did that.
Okay.
Right.
One of them. Yeah.
Nice.
And then I'm starting to play more with the composition of the image. This is just also a quick render often. Just bring him into like an environment which it's just quick Google search.
So more photo bashing. And
Yeah, this is totally photo bashing.
quick comping.
This was never meant as a final piece. This is just an exploration.
But there's a lot of I mean, the eyes specifically. There's emotion in the shot now. Like it seems like you're being drawn into the character. Like there's a story behind it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I don't think the eyes were still working at this point. I want him to look more into the camera. But it was, yeah, definitely. If you manage to get the eyes right, you're so far ahead in the image.
Yeah.
If you screw up the eyes, you're in trouble, almost regardless of how nice the rest is.
Right.
Nice.
So I use a combination of just having like a basis of the eyes in 3D,
Okay.
and just Photoshop painting on top for the texture, and just painting in Photoshop in post afterwards as well.
Right.
Getting like the nice little speckle highlights, some subtle color variation,
Right.
some saturation, it just makes it pop.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily look realistic, but looks appealing,
Brilliant.
which is a fine balance.
Good. Good.
And more compositional tests, and it's starting to get there. This is cleaner. It's more appealing. It has more work in the color grading.
Okay.
But it's still not there. But it's almost there. So yeah, at this point, I'm also sending this out to a lot of friends of mine and just getting feedback.
Right.
Okay.
And then we have the final setup in Modo,
Okay.
which is again using a 3-point light setup, which you can see here.
So that's
Yeah.
basically your light rig.
Yeah, yeah,
3 area lights.
yeah.
And you got School of Fish in there.
Yep.
Scale. Feel like the scene a bit more nice. Cool.
I redid this lighting so many times.
Yeah.
It's, I find it oftentimes to be easier to just kill the lights and just redo it instead of trying to fix a broken system.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Sure.
So
Okay.
yeah, I really enjoy lighting, so that's also fun.
Good.
Yeah, especially with preview running constantly as you're moving the lights around.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. The
makes
preview
for a
is really nice.
Good workflow.
The pass is very simple.
Okay.
Alpha, depth. I did a depth here in Photoshop using lens blur. Normally I do that using the 3D cameras, but this was just used lens blur.
Right.
Ambient occlusion, specularity, subsurface, reflection, diffuse, and the beauty paths.
Okay.
So I can just control those
Yeah.
afterwards.
So you can just like tone down the specular or
Yeah.
increase the specular.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
And then we have the final render from Modo. This is
Right.
without any post-work on top. And one of the reasons, as I said before, I do post-work is because it just looks better.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And that's why I do the tests along the way as well.
Okay. But I've noticed you've also flipped the image horizontally, right? Is there a reason behind that?
When you're doing drawings and paintings in general as well, it's really easy to get stuck in a very static mindset. And by flipping an image, you see it in a new way.
Right.
Okay.
And this just happened to look better.
Right. It refreshes the eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have the final image.
Okay.
Very
And
nice.
Thank you. Yeah. Brilliant work.
So that's the difference between the raw render from Modo and the pimped up one from Photoshop.
Okay. And how long would you say this project took?
It took a couple of months. This was during the last year of school.
Okay.
So I had a bachelor of film to make as well and a showreel. So
Oh, well. Okay. Juggling a couple things.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, you can say that.
Cool. That's really good work, mate.
Thank you.
Cool.
Okay, round of applause for Henning.
Thank you very much, Henning.
Thank you.
Oh, right. So while we do a quick transition, I just want to do a couple of mentions out because Twitter has come alive with people, which is absolutely lovely. So I just want to say hello to, there's a whole long list of countries here. So we've got people watching in the US, UK, Germany, Canada, Russia, Belgium, Poland, Spain, South Africa, Norway, Brazil, Italy, Netherlands, Austria, Finland, Sweden, Switzerland, Czech Republic, Colombia, Greece, Bulgaria, Costa Rica, Venezuela, Denmark, Saudi Arabia, Jamaica, New Zealand, Cyprus, Kazakhstan, Romania, Mexico, India. So we've got all our bases covered. And there's 3 people I really, is it not picking me up?
Mike, yeah? Are we going to share mics?
Hi, can you hear me now? Okay, sorry about that. We had a long list of countries that you might not have heard. Lots of you. Yes, okay. Love doing this live. But there are actually 3 people I desperately want to say hello to. So, Dylan, welcome to your first session. I'm usually a bit more prepared than this. Thanks, Courtney. So, welcome. Hope you're enjoying it. Also, want to say a big shout out to CG Masters VFX School in New Westminster, British Columbia. All their students are watching this in their classroom right now.
Wow.
Can you tweet us a photograph of that, please? Because that would be amazing. And hashtag it TF Sessions. That would be ace. Also, CD Rudy. I really hope that's right. Apparently they're watching a class in Indiana as well. So welcome. That's so cool. It's really cool. And like when these were coming in, I was like, oh my God. I was like sitting over there really excited. Wow. And also we've got people in the Twitter world watching from all over. Best one, Jamaica. How lovely.
I wish I was there right now.
Same here. It's so cold and wet here in London. So keep asking your questions. We have got a stack building up, but please do keep asking any questions at all. We'll put them, as long as they're not rude, we'll put them through to the guys. So next up, we've got the legendary Fred Gambino. So I'm going to hand it over to you now, Fred.
Thank you very much. Okay. Right. So I must admit, earlier on I did geek out a little bit because Fred here has done all the artwork for some of my favourite sci-fi books in my childhood, and yeah, please explain to us your process from when you first created those artworks to where you're at now. That'd be great.
Well, I've been an illustrator for a number of years. It may be hard for you to believe, but I was actually doing this a long time ago before there were computers. Yeah. And so in the old days, we did it in this old analog style. So I thought it was interesting to show the transition, and this is an example of the kind of stuff I used to do before computers. And this was a book cover for a book called Canberra High, obviously of a soldier's face, and it's painted in acrylics. And if we zoom in, you can see the kind of detail that I would go to, and this was all a combination of hand painting, airbrushing, frizz film, scalpel, scratching stuff out. Okay, those kind of techniques. And I thought this was an interesting one because you're talking about the Asimov stuff. This was conceived as one long painting, which was supposed to show the city-wide planet of Trantor or Coruscant to the younger people today. And it was going to be divided up into 6 covers. And when they were all put together on the shelves in the book, they presented this big kind of panorama of Trantor. But what was interesting about this is back in the day, this was the way I used to do 3D, the actual physical 3D.
Literally kit
bashed physical models, But they were all, I got a bit of a reputation for wandering around the shops, the chemists, looking for interesting shampoo bottles. And I'd take these back and spray them with car paint and add, like the ship on the right there's got a couple of A10 engines, and the body of the thing is a shampoo bottle and sprayed up with paint. And there's all sorts of stuff in there, bits of shrink wrap that go around Easter eggs, other bits of model, corrugated cardboard. It was a bit like a precursor to what I'm doing in 3D, but obviously I was doing it physically in those days. And I did that for quite a number of years. And then along came the computer. Somebody showed me a magazine with images from a program called Bryce, which is almost ancient history now, but at the time it was cutting edge, and it generated these amazing looking landscapes. And I was quite shocked to see the kind of stuff that I'd been doing traditionally was being done digitally. And so I thought I'd already been left behind. I had to get on this bandwagon, although I knew nothing about computers. And so I actually cashed in an endowment mortgage to fund buying a Mac, Bryce, Photoshop and Alien Sketch, which became Maya. And I remember I bought the software and the manual for Bryce and read all that a week before I actually got the computer. The computer came in box. I had to get a friend to come in and show me how to put it all together. And I sat there that Saturday morning and produced this infinite sea with a chromium globe reflecting the environment. It was absolutely amazing, just stunning stuff. So I was sold. I mean, when I made that leap of faith, I had no idea whether it was going to work or not. But I actually found that the process was very similar to what I'd always been doing. I was actually slightly ahead of the curve. I thought I'd been left behind, but actually, as far as publishing was concerned anyway, I was slightly ahead of the curve. And so I had a bit of an uphill struggle to get the art directors to accept digital imagery to begin with. And the printers didn't know what to do with digital images anyway, so the results were quite often not good. But eventually they allowed me to, well, the industry caught up really. And so I started doing stuff digitally. But the series of books that I really cut my digital teeth on were the Battletech Mech Warrior books. which basically consists of lots of battling robots. A lot of these covers have been done before traditionally, and I started doing them digitally. And from about 2000 to about 2010, I did about 4 a year.
Right.
And I was using Lightwave at the time, and this is where I learned how to model and UV, and actually went to a lot more trouble than was really necessary for a still image at the time. But I was just so caught up with the technology and just the fun of doing it that
beautiful. And I mean, is there a lot of there's a lot of Photoshop in here as well?
There's the background is Photoshop, and obviously colour grading. The mountains are Photoshop, but the mech and the mechs in the background are modelled and UV'd and lit in Lightwave.
Cool.
It's not something I'd do so much these days. I would tend to do more in Photoshop, the texture more in Photoshop, so it's just quicker. But at the time it was all new. And they went through a phase where they wanted to introduce figures. And so this was very similar to the process I used to do in before digital work, where I'd get the models in, photograph them, and then build the environment and the machines in Lightwave in this case, and match the lighting to the studio lighting basically, and composite them all together in Photoshop.
Nice.
This was an ad for Guinness. They had a TV campaign where these ant-like characters came out of the ground and grew into rugby-playing trees.
Right.
Yeah, like they do. So I built this single character. For the most part, the model is there, but a lot of the textures were applied in Photoshop in this case, because it was going to just take too long to UV all the complicated shapes. And then I duped the figure, but had to go into Photoshop and alter them using Liquify, the paintbrush, or so that it looked like a bunch of individual players rather than all the same.
So all the roots and the branches are all Photoshop?
They're textures applied to the model. A lot of the fine detailed twigs and that kind of thing I put in with the paintbrush.
Cool, nice.
But the basic shape and a lot of the stuff on the figure was done in Modo.
Cool.
I forget which, I think it was 401. This one was some time back. The background was meant to represent a kind of Guinness swirl. So that's why that looks like that way.
Nice.
This was one of 2 images that I got into the Star Wars Visions book, with George Lucas invited illustrators and artists around the world to contribute to his book for free, which we all rushed to do. And I did a couple of roughs, and he liked this idea of the air whales in their wild environment before they're tamed by whoever the guys are that are riding them.
Sure.
The sea in this case is Modo, is the cellular texture in Modo applied to a subdivided surface and lit, but the foam and the spray was applied in Photoshop. And the water coming off the air whale was a photograph of that texture applied to a card with a stencil map. And the point of doing that really is that although it's kind of flat when it's rendered, it has the environmental colour. So when I take it into Photoshop, I've got a solid foundation to work from. So then I work on that, add a bit of motion blur and paint and other stuff to get that kind of feel.
The composition of this shot's really, it's
quite stark.
Yeah, exactly. I like the way you've.
It was a happy accident. I was trying to come up with a composition, and in one of the orthographic windows, I saw that very graphic shape, and I thought that looks cool. So
nice work.
I went that way, but I hadn't thought of it, I hadn't conceived it. It's part of the working in 3D. I can get these happy accidents that take you in a direction that you might not have thought of. So an illustration for a book called Perdido Street Station by China Mayville. And there's a character in this called the Construct Council, which is basically junk in a scrapyard that's come to life. It's formed a living creature. Can't actually talk itself, so it has a human corpse that it's severed the top of its head off, cables run into it, operates like a macabre kind of puppet that it talks through. But to get the effect, what I did with this was take a figure mesh and then use the vertices to seed replicated junk. I created a group with lots of different elements of junk, cogs and cables and whatever. And then Modo kind of haphazardly splattered that over the where the vertices would be the figure, so it created a figure for me out of junk. And then obviously I lit that and then took it into Photoshop and manipulated bits of it, moved bits of it around.
So is it a dense mesh that you're working with the figure? Is there
The figure. No, I actually simplified it if I remember correctly. So there were less vertices in it because otherwise it would have been too complex.
Right.
So I did actually simplify
it.
The eyes were modelled. They were the only bits that I actually specifically modelled, so they had to go in a specific place.
Right.
And I actually did the same thing with the junk in the background,
Yeah.
which you can, but did it in a different scene file and then put the two together.
And I like the way even the way you kind of position the camera, and it's you've got the eye for the photography is just as
It's that very cinematic kind of Dutch angle where everything feels slightly out of kilter. I did some illustrations for cut-out dragons. The idea was that you would take these things and cut them out and form them into dragons that you could actually fly. But they wanted an illustration to sell the product. But the interesting thing, again, was using replicators in a different way. In this case, using the constraint to background. I actually used the vertex tool to just paint all the rivets in place. So wherever I dropped a rivet, a vertex, a rivet appeared. So it was a much more intuitive and fun way of putting all those rivets in rather than modelling them and placing them.
But still a rather manual way of doing it.
It was a manual way of doing it, but it gave it a kind of handmade feel as well because they're not perfectly in line.
Yeah, you can tell that if you look closely, you can see that the rivets are actually not completely.
If you look at that line kind of wave as well there.
They looked like they were just hammered in by someone.
Yeah, exactly. That was the point of doing it.
Nice.
And I spent some time in LA working on Cartoon Network's Fire Breather. So did a various number of machines. This was one of the flying machines, which started off as a fairly basic model, but as the project went on, it became more and more complex and I finished up UVing it and applying textures. The director, I'm going to press play here. The director wanted a Thunderbirds moment because this thing is hidden inside of a school bus. And he wanted an idea of how it would unfold. And it was actually easier for me to do this in Modo, even though I'd never done any animation before. I actually learned how to animate. It was my first bit of animation.
It's a lot better than my first 3D animation.
With a bit of help from the Luxology Forum. It was easier to do it that way, to show him the idea rather than do drawing after drawing. This is another vehicle for the film. This was the Kaiju heavy lifter. I don't know how many people are familiar with this story, but it's a bit of a kind of Godzilla type story where kaijus kind of run rampage, and there's an organisation that has all this high-tech machinery which is designed to stop them destroying the place. Exactly. And this was a machine that came and lifted them. And there was some debate about how this would actually work, and the production were going to have cables and stuff hanging from the bottom. But I thought it might be nice to have something more high-tech like a tractor beam. So I did this animation to try and sell them on that idea. But they didn't go for it.
No?
They finished up with the cables anyway.
So that was your second ever animation?
Yes, actually, probably, I did actually a number of other, because as the storyboard team discovered that I'd got these models, because nothing had been modelled at that time, I was the only one doing the models. They got me to do little simple animations for the story reel. So I finished up doing quite a few, just vehicles flying off into the distance and that kind of thing.
That's cool.
That's why the models got more and more complex. This was the Kaiju hauler, in which the brief was it had to be very big with lots of wheels.
Big with lots of wheels.
That was it from the front. This is a bit of fun with displacements. The Kaiju live in the underworld. And so to get that kind of effect and to try and come up with some random shapes that I wouldn't particularly have thought of, I used the cellular texture as a displacement map. And I had kind of several layers of it, so that I got the fine detail from one layer and then applied a greater displacement, and then it twisted the other geometry into these more complicated shapes. So it produced really nice random shapes, and you stick a light under that and it just starts to, you get an unusual look that you perhaps wouldn't have thought of. Then I took those elements into Photoshop again and manipulated them, so I got a composition that I liked, I was happy with. So some of you may have seen a little film last year called Guardians of the Galaxy. And so I did some environmental work at Framestore for that film. Designs for the interior of Nowhere, the skull that was floating in space that they went to. And they wanted landing platforms, columns, and that kind of thing to have an organic feel. So it didn't look like the Death Star, basically. So and they also wanted to give it a kind of 70s, 80s sci-fi feel.
Yeah.
So these were some of the designs that we came up with, and basically this was kit bashed in Modo.
Nice.
Bits of geometry taken from everywhere, because the point of this is it was meant to be built out of space junk.
Right. So this is generations of people living in the same space,
and
just
layers and layers of stuff have built up, and they've just used whatever they've had at hand. That was the kind of brief.
And you found Modo quite easy to, I mean, was it the kit bashing set that
I actually got the job of creating the preset library using Modo's presets.
Right.
And as we came up with bits of geometry that we liked or that somebody had built, we added it to the preset library, so we'd all got access to it.
Right.
And then we just pulled it in, and we were all using the same bit, so it looked like it came from the same
so you've got the same type of spaceships and everything.
Exactly, from the same design.
And then you're just using the preset browser to drag stuff into your scene.
Exactly, and move stuff around.
I think I need this junk.
Exactly, and delete it if you don't like it.
And I mean, sorry, carry on.
I was going to say the textures in this were applied in Photoshop.
And how long would it have taken you to have constructed something like this?
It didn't take very long to actually construct it, but it took longer to get it approved. We went through a lot of iterations, and then the art director would look at it and we'd do some more until we found a design language that he liked, and then we kind of moved in that direction.
Cool.
So that's another example without the textures, just the kind of straight.
So this is what you'd then take into Photoshop and just paint
and
all
and apply the textures in one.
The
geometry of this was pretty awful. It couldn't be used in the film, so these were then handed over to the models. The point was that they'd got a proxy model of the interior of Nowhere, and they got a lot of very nice atmospheric matte paintings, but it was hard for the modelers to decipher what any of this stuff looked like. So this is what we did it in this way. We kind of evolved this way of doing it, so we could show the model exactly what the stuff looked like.
It's basically 3D concept art in a way.
It is, that's right, and it didn't really matter what the geometry was like. The point was to come up with the design and the shape of it. You can barely see any of this in the film, I've got to say. We spent 3 months doing it, and it's lost under layers of VFX. And I know it's there because I'm looking for it. But these were individual landing platforms. This was slightly different in that these were built from drawings that I did or other people in the.
And they look slightly more high tech. A little bit less harvested from old stuff.
Exactly, a bit more purpose built stuff. This is kind of supposed to be a mining device. This was designed by one of the other guys in the studio, and I built it in Modo. This is something else that we did, in that we take a piece of basic geometry and then paint over it, because building a lot of this detail, the superstructure and the whole, and that would just be too time consuming for what we had to do. So we would paint onto that.
And is that a technique that you guys adopted to save on time, or is it just because it was the easiest way to iterate or go through as many ideas as possible?
It was to say, well, it's both. I mean, it's the same thing really, to just save time and to come up with different ideas.
So what you've got here in 3D is basically like a chunky looking cylinder with some details added to it, and then you just paint everything on top of it.
A lot of the stuff on the top is painted. And actually some of the other bits and pieces are taken from other renders and just brought into Photoshop and added to it. But the whole of the superstructure, all that stuff was painted in Photoshop. And that was an example of putting all this different stuff together as an image to sell to the client. So the whole mixture of, this is a team effort. I built the thing in the foreground. One of the other guys designed the mining machines. I built them, and then we composited. Another guy did the painting in the background, and then I composited it all in Photoshop. But the basic renders are Modo of the geometry.
And the colour palette, is that your choice in terms of the look of the style? Or
came out of various discussions, meetings. But I had an influence on it.
Cool, nice.
And these were the favelas that were supposed to lie on the inside of Nowhere. That were basically, again, built out of space junk. And that was a turnaround of one of the organic-looking columns.
There's a lot of detail in there. There's a lot of elements.
There's lots. By this time, we got quite a big preset library. So we were just jamming stuff together. But it was
cool. Nice.
And then I don't do a lot of personal stuff, but these next 3 images were personal images that came out of a discussion on Facebook. And somebody posted a photograph on Facebook of a massive column of gas from one of Saturn's rings, and another guy had said this would make a good painting, and so that's how the Ring Miners series was conceived. So this is some miners in the future mining a ring planet like Saturn. You can see that there's some construction at the top there. Do you want to just?
Yeah. Sure.
I'll just show you this file in Modo. So this is what the Modo file looks like, and you can see that the ring particles are replicators. There's two layers of replicators there. There's a big chunk and then there's the little particles. And what's a really cool thing in later versions of Modo is that you can scale the replicators, which you couldn't do before. And so I've cheated the perspective on this. So if you look at it from the top, you can see that all this stuff converges to an imaginary vanishing point. So when you look at it from the camera's point of view, it looks like it's going off to infinity, rather than trying to actually build something going off to infinity.
You didn't need a billion instances.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And is that a technique that you've developed over, or you've used from?
Well, it's an old trick that they used to use for physical models,
where
you'd force perspective to give it a greater sense of scale.
Right.
So it just seemed like a sensible thing to do it in 3D as well.
Do you find a lot of those skills transferable in a lot of the work that you do today? Like, they're still
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as far as the image making process goes, it's all about composition anyway, and that applies whether you're doing it in acrylics or in 3D.
Right,
exactly. However you're doing it, it's to produce a compelling image at the end of the day. And the main ring particle there was sculpted in Modo.
Yeah. Nice.
Go back to the slideshow. Sorry, I can't do this. I've got to get Courtney to do it. There we go.
There you
go. Somebody else suggested that or said that it would be nice to see what the ship looked like from the front, so I did this image of it from the front. Cool. Again, it's replicators for the particles, Modo's particle system for the dust clouds, and then I got a big ring with a stencil map to do the rings at the top, and then composited it all in Photoshop. So the concept of this really is almost like a big basking shark with this massive maw that just try and drift through the rings, sucking in ring particles and then refining them and turning them into raw materials. And this was the final image in the series, with another spaceship that was kit bashed from the Modo space bashing kit. There was something, having spent the time at Frame Store doing that, it's something that I tried obviously with this. It's a good way of coming up with shapes and escaping that muscle memory where you're drawing the same shapes all the time.
Right, cool.
So this is Dark Shepherd. Titan Books approached me to do an Art of Fred Gambino book, and some years back I'd come up with this idea, conceived as a screenplay and a novel maybe, this Dark Shepherd story. So I said to Titan Books, I'd love to do it, but would it be okay if we included some of the script and as many concept images as I could do for the story in the time available? And they were great. They just really let me do exactly what I wanted to do. So this is the main character. These were actually, because after I left Frame Store, I spent about 4 months just doing these images for the book. But I did have these two characters beforehand, and these were modelled and UV'd completely in Modo, so they got complete 3D models. The later stuff, a lot of it is textured in Photoshop. That's at the start of the story, they find a derelict. In fact, if you get me back into Modo, I'll show you the Modo file.
There you go. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Oops, there it is. So this is the derelict spacecraft. A lot of the, again, replicators for the floating debris cloud around it.
Okay.
A lot of the textures in this, it's a very simple shape, but it was shells of geometry with stencil maps, simple stencil maps repeated, applied to it. And that gives the illusion of a lot of detail, but it's not a very heavy scene at the end of the day. And somewhere
so to give the impression of kind of panels that cover parts
of it. And lots of extra detail. And I've got a little astronaut floating about.
Right.
So it's cool.
Gives it a lot of scale. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, the stencils, are you are you painting that inside of?
Just in Photoshop,
in
yeah.
Photoshop,
The very simple images just repeated.
Okay.
So, and I was generating them in lots of different ways. I was taking photographs and reducing them to black and white, or I was just doing random shapes using a program called Alchemy, which generates random shapes. And I was using that a bit, and just whatever appealed to me, and then I would just splatter them on the model, either using the UV map or using a cubic mapping method or a cylindrical method or whatever. And just try different things until I got an effect that I like the look of, basically.
So you have a very sort of visual way of working. You just try stuff until you see something you like.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. You want to just go back to the slideshow? Okay. And that's another view of the same thing.
You can see like the stencils cut out.
You can
between the layers.
And it's got a very kind of shiny metallic finish applied to it, which you see the scavenger ship in the background there. Right. Then they go into it and find a strange device. You need to buy the book. Find out what the strange device is about.
It is a beautiful book, and the concept art is really inspiring. So.
Later on in the story, they travel to a cloud ring system, and there are clear lanes in this ring system that have been cleared out by shepherd moons. Shepherd moons are something that were so named they're in the rings of Saturn, and that's why Saturn's got that complex ring system.
Right.
So this is the Dark Shepherd. That's where the title comes from.
It's nice.
The shepherd moon. Replicators again for the rocks in the foreground. Modo's particle system draped around a cylinder. I made a simple cylinder, and then I used the vertices of that to generate the cloud tunnel, and then put lights at that end.
Okay.
And then took it into, again, that was one scene, the moon was another scene, the replicated bits were a third scene, and then I put them all together in Photoshop and comped them all together.
How much work would you say is in Photoshop from on this shot here?
There's a lot of Photoshop work on the moon for the textures, and also it was I broke that shape up a lot in Photoshop, and there's a lot of grading work and contrast work for the texture. Although the texture is out of Modo, but then it's just worked upon really.
Sure, yeah.
So I'd say for the background, it's probably about 60% Modo. For the moon, it's probably 60% Photoshop.
Right. Okay.
They land on the habitat. This is a maze that they go into, or a temple. And again, this was shapes that were kind of simple shapes that were randomly put together until something appealed to me. Replicators again for the debris, the wrecked spacecraft that is supposed to be on this plane. The two main characters have a bit of a falling out at this point, so we have to have a kung fu fight.
Okay, and we can now go to this in the book, because you actually really photographed a lady, doing the kick
she was,
position.
it's a tough job, somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
She was a physical trainer and a kickboxer, and so I set her up in the studio, did the photography, and then matched the studio light into the model that I'd already built and UV mapped and textured. So and rigged to some extent.
So so you've already created the model, and then you've got an idea of what the pose that you want the lady to create, and then you've
I bent the geometry to fit the photograph and matched the lighting to fit the photograph, so I could put her head into it, and it would more or less look right.
Cool.
So in a way, the lighting in the final scene is kind of a byproduct of the lighting of the original photograph for the character.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
To some extent.
Yeah.
I mean, I've changed it a bit, not to make it more moody.
Sure.
Obviously, I didn't want light on the character that's been attacked. I wanted it all to focus on her.
On the heroine. Good.
And this is my homage to B-50s movies where the mech in the story rescues the heroine from the exploding habitat behind. Okay. So this is a breakdown of how I would put these images together now in Photoshop and Modo. The spacecraft lands on the habitat. You can see the habitat rings in the background. So these are the raw renders as they come out of Modo. That's the ground plane. I put these mountains that I photographed in Canada, and I put them on a card with a stencil map and a transparency map.
to
give the kind of misty effect. And again, the point of doing this rather than just doing it in Photoshop is that it has a cohesive colour feel to it.
Right.
I guess it's also easier with like perspectives matching and stuff like that.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the habitat rings. This couple of the crash spacecraft. This is the replicator space junk.
Yeah.
And then renders of the spacecraft itself in different colours.
Okay.
So here it is in Photoshop, all composited. You can see the files on the right-hand side there. Just that's the raw render as it came out of Modo. And then in this next bit, I've applied textures to the vehicle and a bit of dust and stuff in the background.
Nice.
And worked on the habitat rings to knock them back. And then put the dark grey render of the spacecraft over the top with a layer mask, and then I can paint on that layer mask to reveal the bits, or just keep the bits that I want. So the beauty of doing that is it's just one brush stroke, but it's got all the textures and the lighting.
Yeah, so you're basically painting in a different material.
Yeah, exactly. But it all fits. You know, the colour, the lighting, and everything. All the textures are already there. So one brush stroke does the lot. And the same. There's the red render, and then there's very little of it.
Right. So you're painting the accent colours.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then a layer of dirt and dust applied over that, and then the foreground textures in there, and then the final application of dust and other bits and pieces.
How long would you say it would take you to do a shot like that now, or?
It's difficult to say because it kind of evolved over a period of time with the habitat rings. Were from a different model, from a different project that I did. So I'd already got that, and they were already textured. That saved me a lot of time. The ring particles I'd already got for the Shepherd Moon job, so I could recycle them. So and a lot of the spaceships came from other projects as well. I built the scavenger ship, and I built the car previously. A lot of the other geometry in the scene actually is pretty simple stuff. So I suppose if I had to sit down and build the whole thing from scratch, it would take me a couple of weeks. But because as we all do, you build up an asset library, don't you?
And then
so I've got so much stuff that I can use now. It probably only took 2 or 3 days to put it together.
No, it's nice. It's great work.
And probably a day or so to do the Photoshop work. You know, once you've got the geometry rendered out.
Brilliant. So so that's the last one. Yeah?
That's the last slide. Yeah.
So I'm going to plug this again.
Please do.
I'm going to plug it too.
The Art of Fred Gambino. The concept book. There's your the story, the backstory.
There's the opening to the script.
Yeah, the opening to the script. That's inside here as well. I'm going to get myself a copy when I get outside. So
you should get it signed.
Yeah, I might even. Now that we know, we've got contact. Brilliant. The Dark Shepherd. Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay. Right, Henning, come in and join us. Rounds of applause for Fred. Wow. Fred, there's unbelievable love that's just happened for you on Twitter.
Oh, really? That's good.
Yeah, like, seriously, messages from, you might know some of these guys.
Probably.
And I'm probably going to pronounce names wrong, so forgive me. Chava Chippy?
I don't know.
No. So just absolutely loves your work, loves the fact that, strong traditional background and that transition, and, it's exceptional. I'm a fan as well. You know that, because I told you that earlier.
Stop it.
Jarvis Jones has always admired your novel art, especially the Mech Warrior work. Really loves Fred's work. You can go and look at Twitter later and feel all blushy.
Whenever you need it, you go.
If I'm feeling low.
So Orpheus Design has been waiting all week for you. So that's just amazing. Someone commented about your Roberto Scarcello. Great T-shirt.
Oh, right,
What's
yes.
going on
Serenity. I did try to get a Dark Shepherd one done, but it didn't arrive in time.
Kind of like a beautiful word though, right?
Well, yeah, I suppose.
Not something you get often in London, unfortunately, sometimes. Mike James just loves your work from the early days. And he really relates to the progression and methods that you're using, so congratulations. You're on Twitter, aren't you?
I am, but I don't use it very much.
Well, maybe you need to start
Maybe
doing that, 'cause
I'll
it looks like there's some fans here. Greg Hartley, blown away by Fred's modelling. Awesome thoughts. Mid Mustard Studios. Haven't been inspired like this for ages. Great work, Fred. You are awesome.
That's a big compliment.
So, I mean, like, it's been lovely. I've been watching this all happening and coming in, and thanks for the photos as well, guys. That's brilliant as well. The school sent us photos. Yeah, they sent us photos. So we got some questions. So let's see, who should we jump to? Henning.
Hello.
So question from Dillon. New to our sessions. Being primarily a nuke compa, where would be a good place to start? Where would be a good place in 3D to start? Modo or ZBrush?
Modo is better if you want an overall foundation to it. ZBrush is if you want purely sculpting. You use ZBrush for sculpting and concepts, and to have fun with that. But if you want a more solid foundation in proper 3D, ZBrush is still 3D, but yeah, I would go for Modo for that.
Okay.
They're not competing applications; they're complementing each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. And how do you feel about that comment? Just like, you know, someone starting in 3D, because I mean, obviously you've bounced, you know, like you've evolved as it's evolved.
It's hard to say because I find Modo very intuitive, and very artist friendly. It seems to me to be less technical than something like Maya, or so that's why I like it. That's why I'm still using it.
Okay, cool. I hope that answered your question, Dillon. And forgive me, Chava Chippy. Love this, Chava Chippy. I'm going to call you that. So, question for Henning: if you could simplify your workflow into, say, 4 steps, what would they be?
Ooh. I might go a bit above 4 steps here.
4 steps.
All right. Idea, where you figure out what the overall feeling you want for it. We do concepts. You figure out, the conceptual part of it. It should all stem from like what you want the image to feel like. So then you have a foundation for it. So basically, laying the foundation. Then the asset building, which is modeling, texturing, lighting at the end, and then post work on top of that. I think that was 4.
That was 4.
That
was 4. I'm kind of like, God, like I'm just like amazed. It's amazing.
Thank you.
It's just amazing. Okay, so let's see. This might be a double one for Simon and Courtney here. I would love to see some base sculpting workflow in Modo. Will this happen in the future?
Base sculpting, as in like the idea.
I don't know. I'm just reading this. I'm the fluff here.
In terms of base sculpting, as in creating the base mesh.
Shape, yeah, I think.
Then
I think Mesh Fusion is the closest for that, isn't it? Yeah.
And what I've actually done personally for a lot of stuff is the kit bashing, kind of like you've been doing, and then just use the topo tools to create something that actually has nice topology on top of horrible jumbled mess of geometry.
I loved your quote earlier about that being your business card. I actually wrote that.
I think actually that's one of the strengths of the whole kit bashing workflow, combined with the fact that Modo has retopo built in, is the fact that retopo isn't just for sculptors. I've built, I have a background in architectural visualization, so I do a lot of buildings and also a lot of props, so like furniture and stuff like that. And blocking out the shapes out of basically primitives and just chucking things together, and then when it comes to texturing and stuff like that, you kind of need the better topology, and then you just use the topo tools and you make it.
So it's already there.
I did that with the...
argue that it is, yes.
It's already there.
The little robots, the little spidery robots, I did exactly that. I built it out of primitive spheres to begin with. And then once I got a shape that I liked, I retopoed it so that then I got a nice mesh to UV. In that case, I did UV those.
And combined with Mesh Fusion, it's...
Which is something I need to get. I haven't got that yet.
I
keep meaning to.
We'll sort that out. I think
we
have to
can
sort that out.
sort that out. Yeah, I think we can.
Excellent.
Okay, so I hope that's answered that. So it's like, will this happen in the future? It's happening.
I think
it's happening.
You can. With Mesh Fusion, I think, and the techniques that Simon just detailed, I think you can.
Okay, we'll pop that out on on the notes somewhere for this as well. Okay. Oh gosh, right. This list keeps growing. Okay. So there's a person where we got Alex Stainlake was saying I'd finished my BA before hearing about Modo. Please, can we change this? Yes, of course we can. We're in the process of. Well, I mean, the love's out there.
Yep.
Amazing community as well. Loads of people will help you there. So if you're new, loads of training. I mean, you guys, like...
The Luxology Forum is really good.
It's amazing.
People, it's amazing how quickly
It's
people
amazing
come
how
back.
quickly, they come and help
It's
straight
been a huge
away.
resource for me.
And it's never too late to get into it.
No.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's helped you out.
Yeah, of
you
course.
know,
I mean,
like,
yeah, exactly.
like,
yeah,
you know, it's like
I'm pricking my
countless
fingers in
help.
it,
Yeah,
as
no,
well,
they're amazing. So yes, we are trying to, we are changing this.
Yeah.
Let's just say we are. So let's have a look. So we've done the base. Oh, have we done the base? No. I know ZBrush, sorry, that's my British name, is the standard. But I would love to see some base sculpting workflow in Modo. One to take back to the ranch.
Well, there's...
Or is it there?
I think that was the same.
That was the same thing.
Yeah.
Am I doing the same thing? Forgive me.
It could be that we're misunderstanding what they mean by
Base sculpting.
base sculpting.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say it's that roughing out stage of the general shape.
Yeah.
And then
There is a tool in Modo that's similar to Z-Spheres, but nowhere near as advanced.
Okay.
Called Solid Sketch, which lets you create kind of
Extrude
blobs
them,
and chuck them together to create
a mesh or starting mesh.
starting mesh.
Yeah.
With
You could do the same thing if you
reasonable topology.
take a piece of geometry and subdivide it and you can sculpt into that and then retopologize that, which is what you would do. It doesn't work as smoothly as ZBrush would do it, but you can do it.
The workflow
that
still
way.
works fine.
Yeah.
I'd love to see something like Z-Spheres in Modo.
Well, you can talk to people, can't you? Now that you're like 2 weeks on the job.
Good guy.
Send them a list. You can talk to people. No, we've really, we valued all this stuff, and this,
of course.
keep feeding that information in because, you can have the power to influence. This is the thing. This is the nice thing. It's been proven over the years, right?
100%.
For you guys, you've been using it since
Forever.
since you had your little baby shoe on.
Thank you.
I honestly, I think it's incredible that you've found your tool of choice as an artist at the age you found it. It's, and you've worked. I mean, we talked about this when you came in, so it's a bit of loving. When you came in, and it was like, wow, you've worked bloody hard and learned honing your craft, and look what happens.
It says a lot to the 10,000 hour rule.
It does.
It doesn't matter when you start,
No.
Put in the effort,
Yeah, and
become a master at any age.
23.
Yeah.
I think that's a question that's often asked is how can I do it, and the answer is put the hours in.
Put the hours
There's
in.
no real there's no shortcut basically.
No, not at all, not at all. So hang on. Let's see. Loads of stuff like this makes 3D exciting and inspiring. Modo makes it seem accessible. So thank you, boys, for sharing that, because it is. God, still loads of love coming in for you, Fred.
On the inspiration idea, I must admit that the sci-fi that was done with those illustration books, for me personally, has kind of set that standard of what we think sci-fi is. So when we're looking at spaceships, when we think of spaceships, and all of these ideas have been seeded already. And it's from work from like Fred and others that have really kind of
it's like the golden age of science fiction.
Definitely,
definitely.
It's a big deal.
It is. It's. I mean, I'm like I'm a complete nerd. I love my sci-fi books, and it is like sci-fi movies. And and I mean, when I saw your work a couple of years ago, I was like, oh my god, this is really good. Really, really good. No, it's amazing. And you had a fan moment.
Yeah, definitely.
We're just unashamed fans.
Stuff like the things you're doing, and when I was growing up, I saw a lot of imagery by Sid Mead and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's kind of what got me
Right.
into doing imagery in the first place.
Yeah, it's cool. And the thing is a lot of it is looking that way now. So hey, you're influencing space technology.
It's interesting actually that a lot of scientists and engineers do quote stuff that I think Brian Cox was on TV and he picked up a book that had got some illustrations in called it might have been Great Space Battle. There's a whole series of books by Stuart Cowley that were Great Space Battles and other similar titles. And he cited that book as one of the inspirations that got him into science and to be a physicist.
Awesome.
And he was flipping through the book.
That's so awesome.
He didn't actually stop at one of my illustrations.
Damn it.
It was in the book.
Yeah. No, because I mean, I was at a show in November where just before the whole like Philae landing and the ESA were there, and also one of our customers, Platitude, had created a video, a short movie to try and, you might have seen it, to promote this amazing thing that's happening that people are like, Kim Kardashian. There's nothing wrong with her, I love your fans, you know. But it was, the whole theme of it was science fiction becoming science facts, and they had like Sci-Fi writer there. It was just the whole converging thing of it. So yeah, like that influence, like art influencing science, maybe the designs are, you know. So sorry, more questions. Question for Fred. Being with Modo since the early stages of 401, what new features would you say improved your workflow the most?
I really love the replicators and the fact that you can scale them. Everybody loves the replicators. But what's nice about the later version is that you can actually get in there and manipulate them individually if you want to.
Okay.
And you, as I did with the ring mining image, you can scale them using fall-offs, that kind of thing, which you couldn't do before. And that's really cool.
Awesome.
I just love the renderer as well, and you know, the whole thing is much faster now than it was in 401.
Awesome. For Fred, where do your ideas start? On a page with a pen, while browsing photos in Modo, or simply taking a walk? I like the Facebook one, but that was cool.
All of those things, really. Yeah. I mean, I always start with the composition with a pen or a pencil, or on a Cintiq, you know, but I'd actually draw a rough idea of the composition before I start. As far as the Dark Shepherd ideas, that came to me really when I was out on the bike, which is I find is a really good place to come up with ideas. You know, you find yourself relaxed into the rhythm, and there's a stream of consciousness thing going off, and ideas just. If I've got a problem with something, I often find that a good 30-40 mile ride will sort it out for me.
30-40 miles? You're ambitious.
Helps.
That's amazing. I just go for a walk around the block and smoke a cigarette. No, I do walk a little bit. So, actually that kind of links quite nicely into this thing. This question. I wonder if the incredibly talented Fred Gambino does Serenity-based concept art commissions.
I think you've got a lead here.
Did them or does them?
Does.
What does that mean? Serenity-based?
I don't know. Alex Stanlake, if you're watching, can you just elaborate quickly?
I didn't do anything for Serenity, if that's what he's asking.
Do you think you should?
Well,
you should.
if
I think this person wants you to.
If someone asked me to do it, I certainly would. Yeah.
Okay. I've got a question for both of you. Alex, Henning, let's get you going first. Describe your modelling workflow in one word.
Whoa.
Was that the first one of tonight? I think that was.
Yeah.
Yes.
So far, so good.
Can't have one word. I have no idea.
You can't have that word.
No.
Awesome.
That's your word.
Well, thank you. Sculpting-wise, it's messy. Trying to go away from the clean part. You have a lot of very like sterile CG today, and by default CG is very sterile. So in the last like half year or so, I've been trying to like get away from the very sterile point of view. So I'm trying to be messy.
Messy.
Professionally, I would say clean.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Okay.
clean topology. And
Oh yeah.
Start messy and finish clean.
Yeah. Fred, can you describe your modelling workflow in one word?
Not really.
That's
My modelling work these days is very messy because it's not about producing a model that's going to go into production for the most part. It's about producing a shape which I'm then going to work on.
Yeah.
So there was a time where I was really into it, and when it was all new, where I spent a lot of time learning how to get the polyflow and everything correct. But unless there was a specific need to do that, then I wouldn't do it. So that's more than one word, really, isn't it?
It is, but that's a good explanation. Again, I've got another one for the two of you. So let's go to Fred first. How do you balance a personal life with putting in hours on projects?
Personal life?
What is that?
Yeah.
Seriously, what?
For the most part, seriously. For the most part, I work from home, and so I tend to work a lot. It's because it's there and I can. If I'm actually working on site somewhere, oddly, we work less because we tend to work to specific hours. We go in and we leave. Whereas at home, it's just too easy to go back and. You get stuff done that you have to do in the day, and then finally you can settle down. It might be 6 o'clock in the evening, and I'll work through till 12 or 1 o'clock. So.
But is that thing you get sucked into that whole?
Because we enjoy doing this stuff, and it's hard to let it go. If you're really into something, it's hard to stop. Well, no, it's terrible.
It's 8 o'clock
beautiful
at
models
night.
in, photographing them. It's awful.
What do you want to do? Watch TV or get back to work?
I'll
You
do
wanna get
both
back to
actually. I have
work.
TV on in the
All right.
background while I'm working. I get the best of both worlds.
Amazing. Henning,
Well,
the man who has just completed a degree and works.
Well, unlike Fred, I do have strict working hours. So at some point, I'm just done with a day. And so that at least separates it by schedule. But, come back home and you work a little bit more. It's very tempting. But I just take time off. I just have something like workout in my daily routine. It's non-negotiable. I just have to do that. Otherwise, I just become overwhelmed by the work. And even though I love it, too much ice cream is still too much ice cream.
That's what I mean. I take the time to go. I do a fair amount of cycling, as I've already suggested, and I try and do that 2 or 3 times a week.
Good.
You just have to take time out. Otherwise, it's
absolutely. Yeah, if you just sat at the computer all the time, you'd get stale.
What about like scheduling? I mean, if there was something that you had to achieve,
then you just have to do it.
Would you be rigid with your hours of when you work?
You mean if you had a deadline?
Yeah. So would you?
You just have to do it.
Then
the cycling and everything else just goes. If it's that important.
Right. I have kind of the opposite particularly when I work out. I had a lot of problems with my back and arms because I was working too much. So even if I have a deadline now, I will still do the workout because that's what I needed the most.
Yeah,
because when you're just working as hard as you can, you just become really stressed out. You start to become you're really stale. You start to get pain through your back. And I just have to get loosen up. So when I'm under pressure, I do it even more.
Okay.
I'll try to at least.
Yeah. Good.
Okay, so I've got one here that can kind of go to all of you. So I create 3D with Blender. Have you ever heard of Blender? Is Modo similar to Blender 3D?
It is.
Take that one.
I mean, in some ways, I actually find them. I've only used Blender a little, and not to the point where I got comfortable with it. But I think they're similar in the way that they're both kind of immediate. They're not particularly abstract. You put stuff in there, and then they're there, and they kind of make the whole 3D process accessible. And I mean, both by being relatively easy to get into, and also, of course, being relatively affordable, more so in the case of Blender, perhaps. But there are also many sort of fundamental differences between the two, and they take Blender behaves less like a sort of normal software. They have their own keyboard shortcuts for everything, and I think they reinvented the wheel a bit more. So that's a pretty big difference.
Courtney, would you mirror that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I would say Blender is a good intro to 3D. If you you know, hobbyist at home and you just wanted to know, you know, Blender's accessible, and you know, it will teach you'll get some of the core concepts of 3D from it. But you know, Modo on the other hand is very comparable, and in terms of industry standard, it's probably the next step up before you start getting into the more technical and pipeline level, you know, 3D applications. But hobbyist wise, they're very similar. And yes, we have heard of Blender.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if you guys can comment to that either.
I haven't used Blender enough, but yeah, I know that a lot of people start by using Blender because it's a free application,
Cool,
and it's very powerful. So yeah,
it is very powerful. I mean, the paradigms are very similar in all these programs. So if you get used to the interface, it's doing the same thing, but in a different way.
Yeah.
A polygon is a polygon.
A polygon is a polygon, yeah, and a lathe or whatever. It might be called something in a different something else, but it's the same kind of function, really. So you can, you know, you can get used to anything. The thing about Blender, I think, is because it's open source, it's designed by lots of different people. So the interface isn't perhaps as cohesive as it might be. But it's what you get used to. Once you're used to it, then it's not an issue.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's all the. I mean, there were so many, but we've kind of like we've gone over by half an hour. I think this is the longest one, but really, really amazing session. So I really want to thank you guys so much for taking time out to come and do this for us, and also the date change as well. Thank you. I'm so grateful that you could do it. I really, really am. So round of applause for the guys. So yeah, that's the end of this one for tonight. If you are watching on the record and you have some questions, please do send them through via using the hashtag, because we can get them to Henning and Fred for you. Also, Fred, you really need to get yourself up there. Start following these boys. So the next session is slated, which we are aiming to do a session every month this year, either on the third Thursday of every month or the last Thursday of every month. Next month's session is going to be on the last Thursday, which I believe is the 26th of February. 26th, someone nod? Yes, someone's nodded behind the camera. 26th of February, so put that one in your diary. We'll have information about that coming out soon. So thanks again for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks' time. All right, then, take care. Bye-bye. Bye.